Today, Sunday, August 16th, 2026, at Northside Neighborhood Church, is the day of my baptism, the day I fully convert, and the day I give my life to God. The journey to this day has not been without difficulty, yet here I am, ready to surrender, repent, and lay it all down for the Lord. After my first baptism meeting with Pastor Patrick, he asked me if I'd be interested in doing a testimony. I told him I'd think about it, but if you see me around here, you know I hardly speak, so sharing a testimony would be a stretch. That same day, we went to Amanda's graduation, and I listened to testimony after testimony that evening, and I remember thinking, very funny God. So yes, here I am, giving you a short recap of my life before today. Buckle your seatbelts because we only have a couple of minutes. Born to Eula Thomas and Josiah Williams from a small village called Mesopotamia in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, my name is Felice Thomas. I was the first child from my mom, but I shared my father with 10 other siblings from his previous relationships. Not for long though, 2 years after I was born, my mom gave birth to my best friend and little sister, Felice. I've heard we lived a comfortable life. Well, during that 2 years, I honestly can't remember that far back, but my mom would tell us stories. 6 months after my sister was born, tragedy struck the family, and my father passed away unexpectedly. With no signs of illness, no pain, he was just gone. He left no will, nothing legal in place, so his extended family got everything, while none of his kids were even an afterthought. My mom was left to raise 2 young girls in uncertainty, not knowing what would happen next. For as long as I can remember, my mom worked a low-income job and hustled evenings at her bar to provide for us. This led to us spending most of our times with our grandmother, making do with whatever little we had. I remember my aunts would send barrels for their kids, our cousins, and they'd pass down the things they didn't want, yet we were still grateful. Grandma, she didn't have much, but she never once made us feel unworthy of anything that she could provide. Between the ages of 4 and 8, I carried the sickle cell trait. Well, I still have it now, but those years were the roughest. The lucky ones have it with no symptoms. I was one of the special ones. Almost every week, I was in the hospital, unable to move my body while suffering through the pain. Still, I persevered. I learned pain at an early age, and I also learned about betrayal and fake friendships that would further damage my trust in people. Yet, I still persevered, but at what cost? These lessons shaped my growth and the way I saw everything, but I still managed to perform exceptionally well in school. I used to think my mom was cheap because she'd tell my little sister and me to get good grades, so we'd get new uniform and shoes. But when it was time to go shopping, her face would fall, and she'd explain to us that she had to pay a bill instead, so we'd go another day. When it was time to go back to school, we'd wear the same things from the previous year, or she'd buy shoes 2 sizes too big to save money, saying our feet would grow in them. Could you guys picture that? The more I excelled in school, the more the bills seemed to pile up. In secondary school, first form to fifth form, I found few lifelong friendships, got involved in track and field and netball, and got into my first relationship, which would later create a pattern for my dating history. Even though I learned not to trust at an early age, I'd put my faith and trust in my partner until they showed their bad side. Then I'd move on and do the same thing again, expecting a different result. That was lesson number 2 I had to learn. I was putting my faith in man instead of God. Fast forward to my first job after finishing school. I remember being in the worst relationship of my entire existence. I went to God in prayer for a way out. Though looking back now as I write this testimony, I really treated God like a backbone friend. My ex taught me and tried to make my life unbearable. I think it was like that was my last straw when my coworker told me I had a call. The scholarship my sister had helped me apply for It came true to get my bachelor's in political science with international relations. Now I know what you're thinking, Felice hardly speaks. I thought about that too, but back then I was feisty. I was happy about the news because it meant I'd get to live in another country away from that man. But a new problem arose. The scholarship covered tuition and economic costs only, and the semester started in 2 weeks. Where was I going to get the rent money, the groceries, the transportation? How was I going to survive? I was already working paycheck to paycheck. I had no savings. So there I went, marching to God again. Hey God, it's me again. Small issue. Need your help. I called my sister and told her the scholarship came through, but I didn't think I'd be able to make it. Felice was already pursuing studies at the school I was accepted to. So she told me in our language, girl, you stupid hour. What I eat, you eat. Wherever I sleep, you sleep. Take the opportunity and stop talking nonsense in my head. The struggles got worse, but we were surviving. Felice later got a job on campus, and while I was visiting her, a manager was looking for someone to sell agricultural produce. He gave me a figure of what I would owe him, and the rest of the profit would be mine. So the next day, I was up and down campus selling produce every free moment I had. When Phil finished school, I took a place at the job and kept selling produce on the side. After completing my bachelor's, I got a job back home, which helped with the bills. I met my son's father, and we started seeing each other. Then COVID hit. A year later, I was laid off, and a month after that, Cole was conceived. After he was born, I was overjoyed about starting my family, about being responsible for raising a young man. But uncertainty and confusion crept in as my relationship took a turn. I started a bar to help ease finances, but it pulled me further and further away from Cole day by day. Sounds familiar? Kind of like what happened with my mom and us. My relationship became a never-ending cycle of arguments and making up. Every time I tried to leave, I'd get pulled back in. I forgave and forgave and forgave until it was time to forget. It got to be too much, and guess who I ran to again? I had reached my breaking point. The environment wasn't fair to Cole for his upbringing. I knew I had to leave. The prayers started again. God, I don't know how to proceed. About a month later, my aunt contacted me for caring for her husband as he faced his illness. Here we go again. Another opportunity to get out. That space took me out of toxic environment, and the toxic environment I had let consume my life and gave me a new start. Fast forward a couple of years, I first came to Northside from an invite of a casual conversation between my sister and Lindsay, our neighbor, where we had just moved in. I wasn't a frequent worshiper. Life was really lifing, and though God had helped me so much, my faith wasn't strong. I kept fighting my battles quietly, thinking I could fix everything, do everything on my own. I became both a warrior and a warrior, always accepting the role of protecting and providing for my family. When one of my aunts fell sick and needed help, my sister told me go ahead, that she had Cole covered. By this time, I was wondering if I was supposed to be a caregiver, but off I went. Being in silence most of the time lets your mind wander. One Sunday, a gospel playlist came on, and my whole body lit up. I felt peace, joy, fulfillment, even though my life wasn't where I wanted it to be. After listening to the playlist, Amazing Grace stood out to me. But it wasn't the version I knew. It was something like this. My chains are gone, have been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. Every Sunday after that, I'd put on my playlist and try to read at least a chapter of the Bible. My life got calmer. The problems still came, as they always do, but it felt different this time. Like I had help, even though I still hadn't fully accepted it. Before I came back home, I went to God again, of course, to ask another favor. But this time, I said, if you get me home safely, I'll come find you. I remember thinking, Felice, you can't be serious bargaining with God. The first Sunday I was back, I asked Pastor Patrick, what was the process for baptism? He smiled as though he was waiting for me. As he gave me the readings, I'd make my way home, grab a snack, and sit at the table night after night reading and taking notes. This whole thing felt surreal because if you had asked me a year ago whether I'd be here standing talking to you about taking this step, I would say, nah, not in my wildest dreams. However, I am not a dreamer, but the doubt that had been lingering finally left because of a dream, not just an ordinary one, but one I could still remember clearly after I woke up. A man was wearing a black ripped-up jacket and a black hat. It was unusual because the bottom half swirled like a snake. He stood in front of me, blocking my path, not letting me pass. I had just finished reading Ephesians and remembered chapter 6, verse 10, which spoke about God equipping us with his armor. So I asked him for help right there in the dream. The next thing I knew, I was breathing fire from my mouth. The man-snake weakened for a moment, but he was still there. I kept fighting and fighting until I said to God, it's not my fight. I gave my battle to you. A bright light appeared out of nowhere and burned the man to ashes. I woke up with an epiphany. That dream solidified my journey. I wanted to message Pastor right there and then, but it was too early, so I waited and messaged him after. I had been talking to him before about how I fight all my battles alone, never asking for help, always worrying, and still finding a way to provide. Now I had the dream, I realized some battles are not solely yours to fight. So now you have to call on God and he will set you free. I don't need to rush change, I just need to trust God in the process. That's my story. I was lost in failed relationships, in financial struggles, in fear, in self-doubt, in loneliness. But I found a way. I was blind to who I really was and what I was worth. But now I see clearly. Not because I fixed myself, but because grace found me. Today I stand here to be baptized, not because I'm perfect, not because I have it all figured out, but because I know who saved me. And I wanted the world to know it too. This is my new beginning. This is my amazing grace.